So yeah, again, welcome everybody. Commander A-Rock Oakley with Major Mean Dean, and we have our mission briefing for Jump to Lightspeed. Dean, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I am like southeastern region player, like mostly in like Memphis area. I live in Arkansas, but travel to Memphis. I've been playing Sabine for like 3 sets and just kind of got sick of it. So uh, a lot like that's kind of how I ended up joining the Wedge thread. That might just be me talking low, but yeah, basically I just wanted to get out of the same old aggro deck that I had been playing for 3 sets now with, generally the same cards, but slightly different. A little bit faster in my opinion, but we'll get there when we
Mm-hmm.
get there.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I'm A-Rock Oakley. I've been uh, high on Wedge from the moment he was spoiled. Really just saw the promise in a leader that could cheat on resources and make things um, really, really good. So I dove right in. I played a lot of Han to ECL with some Cad Bane, Tarkin Town, some Han 1 Green into even some Leia in the early time. So very similar play styles from Han to Han and Leia, Han 2 and Leia that we can use in Wedge and allow that to kind of be uh, a way for the deck to function, and I felt like Wedge was taking use of the new mechanic really well, and is really explosive. And I think
I,
under he's misunderstood.
I find that interesting that you started on Leia. That's 100% was my first Swoo deck was
Hmm.
Leia Red.
Love it.
Same same thing, same vibe.
It's great. Yeah, and you get a lot of like that action cheating and resource cheating. It just feels always really good in these types of games. So yeah, we are gonna dive right in. So this is our mission briefing for Ferda Squadron. If you don't know what Ferda Squadron is, I just figured that there would be a squadron of pilots who would act very similarly to a bunch of hockey players. If you haven't watched Shoresy or Letterkenny, it's a lot of where the term derives from. Ferda is for the team, for the squad, for the people, for whatever you want it to be. Ferda can be everything, and it just felt like it fit and is a really fun vibe for everything that we're doing. So Ferda Squadron came to be, and there's a lot of amazing things we can throw in with it. So moving on. So most of you probably know what Wedge does, who he is, and why he's the best Star Wars character out there. But that's a whole different town hall in its own. But
True.
what we have is a very strong leader that deploys on 5. He allows you to play a card from your hand for using piloting. It costs one less. Being able to cheat resources allows us to dirtle actions when we need to. It allows us to make units into, essentially into a turn two play, if not bigger uh, than that, on turn one
It's
and beyond.
exactly. It's honestly incredible how much a like one cost resource cheating goes far in this game, just because of the nature of it. Even just one cost less is that much more aggressive.
It's crazy. And there's a point that we'll get to here about how often we really need to make use of Wedge's action, which I think becomes great. We have a 3/6 that deploys on the ground that is vanilla. Having played Han 2, a vanilla 3/6, which he essentially is, because his when he flips, yes, you can swarm the board, but I don't think I was ever really using his action more than once when he was flipped anyways. So it doesn't feel bad. And in an aggro deck, being able to math 3 extra damage, whether that's onto a unit as a pilot, where he has a lot more text as a 3/4 upgrade, but putting him on the ground and getting in 3 damage can really set up situations where you're able to close with Rebel Assault and For Cause, which we will get into. But when he does pilot, he is very, very strong because he allows you to play the next pilot card this phase and it costs one less. That includes when you pilot the units, but it also includes playing pilots on the ground. So cards like Chewbacca, Luke Skywalker, and Biggs, and even Nien Nunb can all be cheated out onto the ground for cheaper in those later turns when you've attacked with Wedge as he's a pilot. So very strong.
Yeah, Chewie for 4 is huge.
So good. Especially going on like 6 resources. Being able to go
Oh yeah.
4-2 is super, super good. So why would you play Wedge? Well, when you think about other decks like Sabine Green, Sabine ECL, or Poe ECL, or Luke ECL, or Leia Red, or Han 2 ECL, why would we play Wedge over those? Well, he attacks in a different way. I think he has the ability to not only play the wide game, but he's the best going tall deck we have in the format right now. In being able to make a Falcon very big and protect it with Chewie, and to be able to load himself on it to where it's not defeated by all the non-leader type removal and bounce effects that are in the format. And I think that allows for you to understand how the deck functions and really get a lot out of what he can do as a versatile aggro deck. Now, free and cheap pilots. That's really good. Piloting as upgrades, it gives your cards dual flexibility because they are still ground units that maybe have slightly less stats, but they still do damage, and that's what we want to be doing. Um, uh, it's so good. And we don't want to be leveraging it more than like 2 times a game because we don't have enough cards in our hand to just unit and pilot and unit and pilot and unit and pilot. It's not like there's no way. We don't have any good draw spells in this game. So you only need to save 1 or 2 resources a game to really get ahead. One ship getting big enough to where they really can't deal with it is sometimes enough for you to math good and put yourself into a really good spot. So don't feel like you need to be using the action on his leader side every single turn in every single game. There are times where you might only use it once, but that's enough for you to keep advantage and gain and move ahead. Uh, Obviously, if you're looking to combat space, he is one of the strongest space decks available to us in these colors.
Especially
And
now.
yeah, especially
Especially
without
now.
Django. Oh my gosh, dude. Which we don't really talk about here because we can just let him be dead. But we've opened up a lot of spaces in the main deck, which I think has been I might be speaking for you, Major, but it's been really fun being able to kind of open up some slots and fire off some new cards.
Oh yeah. The day after the ban came down, the thread kind of had our own little Ewok barbecue party of
We,
just like, hey, let's really now we can really dig in.
yeah, 100%. Another part of Wedge's strengths are we get to play the Rebel package, which I I will go ahead and say this. You can play me in the comments if you'd like. It's the strongest aggro synergy in the game in SWU, and I don't think it's even close right now. And uh, it's so good. We are able to leverage a lot of really good Rebel cards, probably the 3 main ones in Rebel Assault, Metal Ceremony, and Fleet Lieutenant being the 3 best cards we have in the Rebel Synergy that we can make use of, and we will get into those here in a bit. But that Rebel Synergy is insane. Speaking of some of
Patiently
those
waiting
cards,
for like, oh sorry,
no, go ahead.
patiently waiting for like 3 sets for more rebels was a slog, and we finally got like
Totally.
a leader that is insane with them, and we got more on top of that that we'll
Mm-hmm.
get into, like you said. But
100%. It's I feel like the one that I think has kind of snuck up on us was like Cassian and Fleet Lieutenant that we are like, oh, we just
yeah,
like didn't think about those cards very much, but then when you start to math those cards out, it's like, oh, wow. Like why weren't we playing these? We were too heavy into the space, go space, go space, pilot, 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 and now it's like, oh, no, 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 no. We're doing a lot more than that. So in that event package, we are able to push insane amounts of damage in a single turn. Um, whether that's through a very strong rebel assault or if that's through a couple of swings plus a for a cause I believe in. Big damage swings are kind of nuts. So you can close games out of nowhere that where your opponent doesn't really see it coming. They should if they can math good, but we're just trying to math out here. So yeah, another part that we have recently built on, which I will give credit to Lunch. She's the pilot for Leia Lake Country for the Denver sector qualifier. She she I think for me really broke the idea of, well, bigger base means more actions, and for these aggro decks, that sometimes is just enough. You've played plenty of games on a Tarkin Town base where you're an action or two shy because you were going to kill them on the previous action, but they put you to 25 or 26 before you can get them. And so that started to really, I think, put it in my head and others in the chat that maybe we're wrong in having those cards. But we'll talk about that more. But the other part with this is that there are a lot of cards that can work into the deck and don't hurt the deck, don't really take away from the speed of the deck or the flexibility of the deck that we can use, which we'll go into. There's a long list of cards that are very strong and have fringe use. So your main board, your sideboard, and your maybe board are very, very dense with cards, and I think that that is a very strong place to be with Wedge. Sometimes you don't want to be playing certain cards with others, but Wedge I think has a great card pool.
It's one of those benefits that like Sabine has had for 3 sets of just like being able to react to the reaction every
Hmm.
single large tournament.
It's
You
great.
just kind of get the same thing, but with a little bit of foreknowledge too of like, oh well, that worked for them, it will probably work for us too.
Exactly. We get to make use of a lot of different um, strategies and avenues, and I highly encourage in this to uh, test other decks. Don't just sit and be on Wedge. Be understanding of what other decks are doing because we can take inspiration from them. I really do think other decks have taken inspiration from something that we will talk about here soon, um, with ground pivoting. And I think that that is being talked about in other pilot decks more now than it was before. Um, but jumping into our base options, we have Masasi Temple or any 30-point base. I don't know why you would run anything else. It's the Rebel base and feels like it fits for Wedge. Um, we're gonna go blow up that first Death Star, and what this base does is it technically gives us, 1 to 2 more actions. 3 HP over Thermal Oscillator. That's a turn one attack from a Battlefield Marine, which in a racing situation that's a lot of damage. We're talking about 10% more base health. That's pretty crazy. And those more actions can lead to climbing back into games and getting you ahead. Now, if you're a player who likes interaction, I think Tarkin Town is the best base there. You have to play this properly, and you actually shift the build to be slightly different to be able to make use of Tarkin Town through the Y wings, through daring raids, and some other cards that you can really leverage the Tarkin Town build.
And I think early on it was like confusing for some joining the thread, like why would we be on Tarkin Town if we're not like a ping deck? But it's because of the Y wings we're presenting what I was calling a trolley problem for the opponent, where
Hmm.
we are forcing them to make bad decisions essentially. Um, they have to dig their own grave, so to speak.
Hmm. Putting your opponent in a situation where there is no great choice is generally pretty nice. Now it always doesn't work out. Some decks can make the Y wings bad, but that's the price you pay. But the interaction is, you know, keeping you in games. It can work against ECL as a counter or ambushing unit. So definitely something to keep in mind. And again, the builds don't change too much, and when you start to play them, the play lines only differ slightly. So that's a part of it. The thermal oscillator build, I think, brings apart this consistency, but you become glass cannon-esque. Even though the 30 HP is still pretty glass cannon, but you can have a slow start in a 30 HP in comparison, and you can climb back in it just because of that essentially one additional action. And with that, if you stumble on the thermal oscillator, it just sometimes feels like you're coming up short. But I think all three of these bases are very strong. We're a little higher on the 30 HP right now, and I think that's where the meta is currently at, where this may be our best option. But between Tarkentown and Thermal Oscillator, we can shift our builds to be, if we need to get under decks more, we're maybe going for the Thermal Oscillator to be a little more Glass Cannon and have that consistency and go, go, go. Or it shifts to there's a lot of ambushing ships, ECLs on the rise, maybe we go back to Tarkentown. There's always going to be ways for this to shift, and having three options like this, I think, is fantastic. So these are going to be the main core of your ground units, and one of these is a new add in Battlefield Marine, which we'll start with. If we're on the 30 HP base, I like Battlefield Marine. If we're on Tarkentown, this becomes a Y-Wing. Probably Red Squadron Y-Wing to be exact. I think it's the best of the
Yeah,
two Y-Wings.
definitely the highest priority. Yeah, I tried grays for a little bit, and it's okay, but it felt like every time I was just wanting the red one.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. And Battlefield Marine, in comparison to Red Y, I think, Red Y can be piloted, but Battlefield Marine just is probably the most efficient unit in the game, full stop, as far as a turn one play. He trades with everything pretty efficiently. He attacks well. He defends well. He does his job. I think it's just an efficient unit. If anybody who has played Sabine, Leia, or any kind of deck in through the first three sets understands the value of Battlefield Marine and what it can do. Being a rebel as well is great. And
The game has been chasing this power since basically of just like cool. It's a Battlefield Marine after this chore is done.
mm-hmm,
A 2 drop 3/3 just hasn't really been another a thing again in this way since, and I think they probably realized what they did when they did that. And that's fine. We'll keep using them.
100%. The other part about Battlefield Marine in comparison to like a card like Sabine, which some people might be wondering why we're not playing Sabine, you can have two Battlefield Marines on the field. So if you draw multiples of them, they're not bad. And I think that that's a place that we want to be in. Not having that unique tag, I think, is very good. Cassian Andor being a just powerhouse of a card, I think on the wedge flip turn, being able when you do go for a ground pivot where they've kind of like they're starting to handle space and then you flip wedge to ground and play Cassian, you're putting 6 damage on the ground that turn and then representing 6 more damage the following turn, if not 8 with a rebel assault the following turn. That's something that your opponent has to respect and has to look to deal with, like immediately. So you've now created two lines um, to attack from. So very, very strong. Cassian also, if we ever go up to 6 resources, which we'll talk about later, is great when you want to go Cassian flip into Rebel Assault. That can be a great way to make use of your resources. Fleet Lieutenant is just awesome. Cheating actions and being able to keep initiative, maybe being able to pilot on turn one where we lose initiative and then Fleet Lieutenant attack and then gain initiative back to have a big swing or a Rebel Assault on that next turn is pretty sick. So very, very strong option for us. Now, Nia Num is often not going to be played as a ground unit. I have won games where he is on the ground smacking for 1, maybe 2 or 3 damage, but those are the games that you don't always want to be playing. I think he is probably one of, if not our best pilot. Chewie's our best pilot. He is our second best pilot, I think, because of his two being played for free and him giving 2 HP. I think that that makes a lot of trading more difficult for our opponent, and he just continues to grow, and he represents. He becomes a big threat the longer the game goes. The sheer amount of damage a Neonum piloted ship can do over the course of the game is really great, especially once Wedge flips into other pilots getting piloted on stuff. The damage really grows, and it becomes an absolute powerhouse.
I think Nine Nub is probably our best of the discounted pilots you can play on turn one,
Mm-hmm.
just because he does get you out of Tarkentown range for the most
Yes.
part. If you're like saying like if you play a green A anyway, but yeah,
Mm-hmm. Hard agree,
give it a
Major.
5 foot exactly.
I love it. Now on to Luke. I think this is a fantastic pilot in a lot of ways of being able to essentially enable the ground pivot really easily. You can run this in as a trade. You can and continue to have efficiency with the units. Um, I often find myself it's like if it's between Chewbacca and Luke, it's always Chewbacca, and then you know, when we're lining up certain turns, uh, Luke going to ground as a pilot that eventually is going to go to ground is pretty good. There are times where he's just going to get attacked into, but if that's saving us actions because he's getting attacked into on the ground and getting cleaned up, it's probably in our favor. And he's dealing 3 damage back or popping a shield or something like that. I think it becomes very good. Just an all-around great card. There's a reason it's probably one of the more expensive cards from Jump to Lightspeed because of its efficiency and its stickiness, which we do like. Big Dark Later is just a unit. He's fantastic. Making the Millennium Falcon a 6/6 is no joke. And I think you'll often look at his overwhelm tag on the fighter, which allows you to punch in and clean up units, which I think is fantastic, and keep pushing damage. But when you put him on a Falcon, it feels really, really good. Getting that extra HP and pushing it out of the range of a lot of relevant cards is super nice. Um, he's also a great play it on the ground. It's kind of like a Fighters for Freedom, just minus the Saboteur. A 3/4 on the ground is solid for 3. So uh, if if I have the option to, you know, keep a keep a hand that has 2 drop and I want to keep initiative and I'm going to punch in, I may then play Nian Num as a free pilot and then go Biggs on the ground as a 3/4. That comes up sometimes, but it's just understanding that a 3/4 body on the ground is just not that bad, uh, especially with his flexibility to being a free pilot. Just great card. And Chewbacca, when we get down to the later portions of this, Chewbacca is a could be the best is the best pilot. Could be one of the best cards in the deck.
It probably, yeah, I'd say.
It's great as a pilot. It's great on the ground. Chewie does work. There are certain games where you go if you have initiative, you go turn one ship, claim, play Chewbacca, game over. Like your opponent may not have the answer. And that's a lot of what we're going to be doing with Wedge, is force your opponent to have the answer. So, I love it. Wedge being a great pilot, um, both as a pilot, but also going as a ground unit for 3/6. We talked about that earlier with him. He's fantastic, and you can start to map your math really well with Wedge, and he's great. I think he's an he's an underrated pilot and underrated unit and leader. So yeah, we'll keep talking about that more.
If one more
Yeah.
to ground, there is an interesting thing with this deck though, because you'll see a lot of space tribal decks have like three, or well, I guess nine total, but like 3 units as their ground units. We are still in that region, but if you think of the pilots of also being upgrades, we technically have like 11 upgrades, and we're still at like the 9 ground unit thing. So if you look at the deck list on like SWODB, it's gonna look kind of like we're like in both lanes pretty evenly, but factoring in that 11, we're about the same as other space decks in that regard. So we are still a space deck, but like you're gonna say later, the pivot option is just insane with us.
So good. Great point. Great point, Major.
Word.
All right, so onto the space units. These are all fighters but one, and we have some are recent adds, which it might be thought about as kind of weird as a recent ad, but I think Django being out of it, we were able to drop our Bright Hopes, and we were able to leverage going a little more aggressive and bring in Wing Leaders and really push Red 3s into the build. Red 3s have been in and out of certain builds. They're not really in the Tarkentown build. They're great in the Thermal Oscillator build. They work in the 30 HP build, and so we'll keep talking about those. But we got the Alliance X-Wing, which when we were talking about the Tarkentown build, I thought the Alliance X-Wing was just a better unit than the Y-Wings, just in general, because it was guaranteeing damage, and if they were had the ability to soak turn after turn, X-Wing was just going to result in more damage, and was a better. You felt better about piloting this, and also you felt better about just letting it keep punching for two, where the Red Squadron Y-Wing, for me personally, always felt like I needed to get a pilot on it for it to be more impactful. So it was doing more damage to base, but then also the indirect damage was doing more. So I liked Alliance
Yeah,
X-Wing a lot.
agreed. I think that spot was where I had gray, and while it's like cool, I have two different Y wings that can do similar things. I'd say 9 times out of 10 they were never picking base,
Hmm.
uh, just about. So it just never really ended up mattering. A lot of people play units that like damage on them. I realized that more than I realized was going to be a problem.
Oh, a super laser
Especially most of
technician on the ground. They're like, "Thanks for the ramp, brother."
exactly, yeah. It's just you just can't play those cards into any soft control list at all. So it just immediately invalidated the card, and I was like, okay, fine, I agree now. Alliance
Yeah,
X Wing's cool, fine.
yeah. And you think about it, it's just vanilla 2-3. It's like, all right, it's not great, but there are situations where you'd look at Alliance X-Wing versus Phoenix Squadron A-Wing and be like, man, I really wish this was an X-Wing over the A-Wing, just in certain situations. So having this versatility across our early plays of X-Wing, A-Wing, Green Squadron A-Wing, and Phoenix Squadron A-Wing, um, that we have really good cards like against Fireball decks and you're gonna want the Phoenix Squadron A-Wing, but if it's like Han, you kind of want a three butt where you can buff it up to a five, so it's harder for them to take out. Even though like it's if it's knee and numb, it's great on the Phoenix Squadron A-Wing, but you have to have that, and that just becomes really difficult to survive a Millennium Falcon on turn one from your opponent. So
Yeah, it just
there's
immediately takes away the option that they have that they're like expecting to have every single game into aggro, and it's like, nah, we got nine, we're good,
hmm nine
we're living.
does good things. Blue leader. This card it essentially creates a ground pivot on its own, and it can be used to take out stuff in the ground, can take out stuff on turn two. It does a lot. This card I think is fantastic. It's been up and down as a three of or a two of, and I think we're kind of settling on a two of because you want to see one, but you don't always want to see two. And if one is able to survive and stick on the ground and just punch for five, you're flying, especially on the wedge turn to create situations where you deploy uh, this alongside a blue leader, wedge alongside a blue leader, it becomes really good. You're representing 8 power across 2 actions. It can then represent more damage off of a rebel assault. And if you have any spaceships, they are now wondering how to deal with it. So blue leaders, just a fantastic card. Probably one of the cooler cards we've seen in the game. Having a space unit that can impact the ground is really cool. I thought the design space is really fun, and I'm happy we get
It's
to
really
play it.
fun when you can exactly. It's really fun when you can play it for five and then stick a pilot on it.
Hmm.
I don't it just like, oh, okay, cool. It's already got damage on it. I'm gonna get rid of it, and you're like, nah, I've got a pilot. It's
Big.
healthy again, kind of.
Yep,
Yeah,
exactly.
I have flipped Wedge onto it before, even after it ambushed, just so that next turn they either deal with it or die in a lot
Hmm.
of situations, and that has won me a lot of games.
Putting the pressure on our opponents with blue leader is great. It does a lot of work. And don't forget being able to ambush the space arena. Say they have a green squadron A-wing. You can choose the ambush first and then deploy blue leader into the ground. So it has 1 damage on it. It's a 5/4 on the ground, and you've cleaned up a space unit. There might be situations where that presents itself and is very, very good. Yeah, blue leader gets
I'm
down.
not doing that enough. I need to do that more.
Look for it. It's good.
Yeah,
Millennium Falcon. This is, I think this card single-handedly wins games. Where if this card goes unchecked, it is it gets out of hand very fast. It just takes one pilot and it starts to really really snowball, and the fact that our leader can deploy onto this, it gets really really scary for your opponent. What this can also do is it can be a target on its head. You may be able to bluff bluff the Millennium Falcon to the ground to space, even if you don't have a pilot, and allow your other units to do work and keep pushing damage where they hyper focus on getting rid of the Millennium Falcon, that allows you to pilot the other units and make them threats on their own as well. So, but if it presents itself where you can load this thing up, you will win a lot of games. It's just nuts. Yeah, insane.
I don't think there's ever been a game that I managed to get one down and stick it with pilots where I didn't win because it's 11 damage. You don't really come back from that unless it's you get some significant swinging power
Yeah.
on your end, like the other person's end. I mean, especially since we're trying to prioritize things like Chewie or Wedge onto it.
Hmm.
It just sticks. It just sticks and stays, and they cry, and then
Hmm.
you go to game two.
It's nuts how many games. Like I Major can speak to this as well, but it's like you come back into games where you're like, oh, it's like it's the Anakin Skywalker effect, which if anybody played that deck in set 3 or played against it, where you're like,
That's fun.
I'm winning this game, and then Anakin's like, no, you're not, and they just go smack smack, and the game's over, and you lose, and you're like, wow, all right, I lost this game, even though I had them 6 damage away from dying, but they hit me twice. And Falcon can feel that way where it snowballs, where we're talking about that big damage potential that plays into it. Uh, now, Red 3 is Red 3 is just sick. Okay, so I think we understand this value if you played in the earlier sets and saw the value that this card can have. But when you really look at the math of the sheer amount of damage this card adds to the table when we go wide, which we often try and do, and especially on, the ground pivot plays where Wedge goes to ground and you have this card on the board, you're presenting significantly more damage. We flip a Cassian out and so on from there. It's just hitting for 4 is a lot of damage to a lot of people's bases, and it goes snowballs really really fast. Similar to the point I made about Millennium Falcon, this has the targets on its head. If it goes unanswered, it the game can end very very fast. So uh, Red 3, it can also be used just on the Wedge flip turn just to play it, and then follow up with another 2 drop or a 2, you cheat out a Chewbacca onto something or a Luke onto something and then flip Wedge. That's a very strong line of play because now you're using it as a pseudo event for that turn to get extra damage in, and yeah, lining up a lot of really great plays. So Red 3 does work.
Often, yeah, often if I can stick red three long enough, if the Falcon's already full of pilots, then red three is usually where I'm flipping wedge, just because then
Protect
it's
it.
well for one, it's gonna sit there for probably the rest of the game because they're staring down the barrel of 11 damage of the Falcon next to it.
12
But
with the raid.
yeah, oh true, yeah, it's yeah. See exactly.
Math.
They lost. They already lost.
Yep. I love it. Um, New addition is Wing Leader, and I think that's just like who doesn't love a Green Squadron A-Wing into Wing Leader or a Battlefield Marine into Wing Leader play. We can pilot this in certain situations. It's not our best ship to pilot, but it does still present a lot of great situations to buff our units and put them into really precarious ranges of like they don't know how to deal with it, where they're going to have to trade multiple units to deal with one of our units, and we're still able to use this as a 2-1 body. Helps us, it insulates us into Power the Dark Side if we have initiative and merciless contests and so on from those cards, which I think are definitely going to be on the rise more and more. So yeah, definitely Wing Leader is very strong.
On top of that, you can't forget the classics. Just
Hmm.
Battlefield and the Wing Leader.
So good, so good. Now, Red Leader is a card that I think functions in a bunch of different ways. And when you play this card, it sometimes feels underwhelming. And I understand that. And I get that. But what Red Leader does, this card can be a 3/4 for his like 2, maybe even 1 resource very often. So on your Wedge flip turn, you have a card in your hand that can be played for next to nothing. And having a 3/4 that just is a 3/4 is great. Whether that's a 2 cost 3/4, a 3 cost 3/4, all of those are good. When we have to play it as a 4 cost 3/4, it doesn't feel as good, but generally we're going 4 cost 3/4 into pilot and gaining a 2/2. So the value's there. So it's more often than not going to just not just be a 4 cost 3/4. Now, another great reason about this card, loading this thing up into against like an interdictor means this doesn't die to its wind defeated effect. So you can, clean it up with a falcon and they kill your falcon, but then you still have a red leader chilling back. So there is some niche use as well. Bright Hope also kind of fit that bill as well when we piloted onto that. Um, Creating tutus as well. I think there's often times where the line presents itself to being able to go, which we don't often get to do, but this decimates your hand, but it sometimes presents a board that's really difficult to deal with, where you go turn one ship, pilot, turn two red leader, pilot, and now you have 3 units with two piloted units, and you're, living in a space where you've created a pretty insane board, 3 units with two that are hitting very, very hard. Um, and that's pretty great of what red leader can present, and that can be very difficult for your opponent to come back from. On we go.
Hmm.
So we talk about the events. Two of these are tied together in Heroic Sacrifice and Trench Run, but we'll talk about Medal Ceremony first. Right now, Rebel Synergy. This is great. This is great after a Rebel Assault. This is great when we know we're going to lose the initiative, and it makes our math really, really good. Being able to grow like a Cassian to a 4/6 is an insane stat line and very good. That same thing goes, Wedge becomes a 4/7. And then all of our space units just continue to grow to where they're harder to deal with. And you're not getting blown out by overwhelming barrage. You're not getting, there's just a lot here behind Medal Ceremony that just does work. And it's a very efficient card, especially with
It was
Quinlan on the rise. Go ahead, Major.
yeah, no, you're fine. It replaced R2, right? Isn't that what we
Yes.
had before? Because I'm sure people were like, well, where's R2 pilot earlier? That's that he's right there. He's Medal
Hmm.
Ceremony.
He is Medal Ceremony.
Yeah. He was just on the reel. He was just kind of Medal Ceremony with like
Only
less
ships.
long term value.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it just didn't pan out as well as we thought.
Hmm.
Swapping two for two was like probably one of the best things we've done in the past month.
Agreed. Hard agree. And then, yeah, Quinlan Tarkentown's on the rise, so you're going to see more force throws. Love force throwing and Medal Ceremony. Here you can have
Oh
nothing.
yeah.
It's so great. So, yeah, we'll talk about the other two, and then we'll let Major Dean take over for the trench run. But Rebel Assault is probably the best card in the deck. It
Best all
represents,
around.
yeah, we're trying to set this card up every chance we can, and you can put yourself in a place where this presents lethal or is lethal in a lot of ways. And that's just and being able to action cheat and put your opponent on the back foot and swing for insane amounts of damage is unreal. Rebel Assault is nuts. And then I think in our most recent build of 30 HP, for a cause is a 100% hit, so you're able to math really good with this card, and I think we have quickly become one of the better for a cause, I believe, in decks based on having 100% hits and being able to put our opponent on the back foot with these big time swings with a Rebel Assault and or just one Falcon hit. Now for a cause I believe in is generally enough to put you in range to win games. And so sometimes you just play the four cause, ship the four cards, and hope you draw another one. Or if you see it, you know the game is locked up. And yeah, four cause does a lot of work. And having a damage source out of hand where it's not like a unit coming into play ready or anything like that is awesome.
There are just so many games that I have won in paper now at locals where it's like they finally killed my falcon that took them like 3 turns to get rid of, and they see I'm still smiling. They're like,
Hmm.
"You have four cards in your hand, don't you?" I'm like, "Yeah, just flash it and we go to game two."
Yep.
Like it just wins games generally
Huh.
speaking.
Absolutely, it does.
The dig
So,
effect is cool too. I just don't know like for me personally, I haven't ever relied on that part of the card as much as the damaging part. It is still good.
hmm
Um, like don't you don't want to disregard that part of the card at all. But we're definitely playing it for the damage to base. I'd say at this point,
100%.
the reach.
I think the only cards you're really keeping on top are another Rebel Assault, a Four Cause, or
Hmm.
like Fleet Lieutenant, and at like maybe a Cassian against Control. Like,
Generally speaking, I'm always using it to dig for pumps.
Mm-hmm. So you want to see a bunch of these cards. Um, Go ahead and talk about Trench Run.
Oh man. Okay, so it's it is a gambit card, right? It's a gambit. You don't want to play this against a deck that you know is going to have a huge unit. Like I would probably sideboard this out versus Piet, for instance. But like
Mm-hmm.
the ability to hit for +4 for one, because so often we are we're discounting stuff to the point where we have like just one resource open. I felt like a lot of the times I've got one resource open, but I have nothing to play.
Mm-hmm.
That's where this Trench Run card comes in. So lately, what I've been doing is I'll go turn one Green Squadron A Wing, turn two discount Chewy, and then Trench Run it, and that's 10 damage on resource three.
It's pretty nuts.
It just I really only had like one close encounter where it almost died. But
Mm-hmm.
even then, if it lives by like one, it's still getting the swing off. Go ahead and Tarkin Town it. I don't care. I got 10.
Mm-hmm. That
I'm
you
probably
have
still gonna
15
win.
HP left on your
Exactly.
base.
Yeah.
Like we'll figure this
Exactly.
out from here.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it. Go ahead. That trade is worth it 100 times.
Mm-hmm.
But I would just say like there is the one drawback that you might have Falcon in your hand and you draw Trench Run and maybe something else. You kind of just have to read the tea leaves and know like, okay, it's not time to take this gambit. I need to resource this, play something better in this particular moment.
Mm-hmm.
But Falcon only being, he's the only transport in the whole deck.
Mm-hmm.
We can kind of get away with the whole like attack with a fighter unit requirement. I think most of the time. I
And
can see
linked.
where
And
there's the what's
go
up?
ahead. Finish up. You
I
got
was
it.
just saying I can see where the drawback of not being able to put it on everything in the deck is a problem. Um, but it's only a two of, and in the same vein of like heroic sacrifice, where I played that card for 3 sets in Sabine for the most part, and I was resourcing that way more than I'm resourcing Trench Run,
Mm-hmm.
like lately anyway.
The sheer value of Trench Run is the ceiling of the card is insane. Like
Exactly.
it represents a pretty insane. It's a four cause on a one drop and cheats in action and sometimes mills two cards that might be pretty relevant for your opponent. Like there's a lot of upside to this card. The downside,
I
your unit might
Yeah.
die, but that's like pinned in the wedge aggression part of Discord, you can find a chat that is from the Poe Blue chat, and they did some numbers on Trench Run, and I think that that is a wonderful tool to understand that a lot of decks it's probably going to be 2 to 3 damage, and for the most part. And there are certain decks where you just don't play Trench Run. I love the concept behind Trench Run on turn two with the Chewie pilot, maybe even a Luke pilot is also sometimes worth going for,
Yeah.
just because you're
That is
a lot of
almost
damage.
always the exact that is almost always the play I'm doing with it. It's rare that I'm going to make that gamble late in the game,
Mm-hmm.
but the early 6 butt I've got some room to take damage on it kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. Um, it usually works out in my favor. That's another point I want to make though is while I'm heavy on the card, never play it on an unpiloted unit,
Yeah.
just in case, because it's
Unless it
just
is
not
your
worth
only out, but don't do it
True,
unless it's
true.
your only out. Like that is like such a fringe
Even
case,
then,
and you probably made mistakes that's put you in that situation in the first
well,
place.
exactly, and even then, that's one of those situations where I was saying like you just gotta read the tea leaves and be like, I'm not gonna get this off. I gotta resource it.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
There's only two of them. It's fine.
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
get something else. You can draw
100%.
rebel assault because you're never punished.
Exactly. Never punished. So yeah, I so to talk about heroic sack, people know that the card's been around for a long time. The reason in the dean's list plays the trench run. In my list, I am playing the heroic sack, and partially as a dig option because just having a one cost draw card, even if you don't attack, I think is great and can find your four causes, find your rebel assaults. I've found a medal ceremony to win a game, pretty nuts. That's fringe case, but it's a non-zero chance, and that's pretty sick. Um, the other part of why I'm currently building on heroic sack is the thought behind the ground pivots. This card works on every single card you play as a unit, and that is the only reason why I'm here. Ceiling is much lower in what it can do. You are guaranteed to lose the unit instead of trench run maybe like very fringe cases where you lose your unit. But so that part of that of heroic sack is it is a guarantee your unit is going away. But
Oh, that's
using
nice.
heroic sack as a closing option is fantastic, and or presenting a way to get your math to lethal off of a for a cause or a rebel assault the following turn is also really good. So it can set up situations where it guarantees math to be in your favor.
I didn't even I didn't even barter that part of it when were going back and forth about it. The fact that like I can maybe lose the unit, you guarantee lose the unit, but
Hmm.
like I guess mine's the gamble that the damage doesn't come before.
Hmm.
Okay, I see it. I see it.
Yeah, but they're both
I still
great
like those
cards.
cards.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think right now both of these cards are going to be in the 60. That is our main board sideboard for both the Dean's list and uh, my list as well. So those events are fantastic. There's one card I actually did not put on here, and that is the R2 pilot, but we talked about that earlier. I think it might have a place in the meta. I just think it's causing up space, and I think Metal Ceremony is probably just going to hold on to that spot for a long time.
I just don't think it's gonna. It's one of them things where it's like if there's another pilot deck that doesn't like because other pilot decks don't have the ability we have to where
Hmm.
if a one cost pilot is now the same as R2, yeah, you can pile R2 onto something. I would say most of the time it didn't really change much,
Agreed.
much more anyway.
Hard agree. Hard agree. So we have a bunch of strong units. If you don't know what these cards are, please, I'm going to post this on YouTube so you can look these cards up later. But most of these you probably know. Bright Hope and Echo Base Defender being two great options to have as far as slowing down your opponent's aggression. So if you happen to be playing a deck that is really, really tough to manage, you have these two cards as options. I think Bright Hopes need to be in the 60 in some amount. I think two of is quite good right now with Django gone. Echo Base Defender can do a lot of work in the ground pivot section and can slow down some ground assaults, which helps get us ahead. Um,
Echo was definitely an inclusion for Django originally. My idea was like I'll side it in to try to buy at least like a turn against a TDR Juggernaut,
mhm.
and that was cool, but it's gone now, so I don't have to worry about it. But even then, it's still just like if I don't have the room to ground pivot against something, I do have at least a wall to buy
Mhm.
a swing, and usually that 4 damage is enough to take care of some things.
Yeah.
To the point where they don't want to do it, and they'll just like not swing.
And
Like,
if it doesn't if it is able to sit back, Echo Base Defender is an absolute beat stick. So
oh
that's
yeah,
it's not it is an efficient unit in a lot of ways, even though it dies to turn one plays, but if timed correctly, it can survive a Sabine leader attack if they don't buff it up, and just wall that, which is great, and it puts them in an awkward situation. So well-timed Sentinels are really really important in this game and can do a lot of work. Let's rip through some of these cards pretty quickly. We got Spec Force Soldier to deal with Sentinels. This is kind of a using this as an event, essentially. Even if it is part of the ground pivot option, it's great because then you got a 2/2 on the ground. K2SO, because if you're playing Heroic Sacrifice, it feels like it should be in your 60 because that represents
right.
9 damage, which is
It's
nuts.
it's nuts. It's also like what he was saying earlier with us having the reverse of Trench Run and Heroic Sack. I've got the Heroic Sack K2 package in my sideboard
Hmm.
for a hard ground pivot, essentially.
Love it. Love it. K2 does work, and very rarely are we ever choosing the discard, but there it might come up. Fang Fighters and Confiscate, disabling Fang Fighters and Confiscate, kind of have to have one of these as a two of in your side, I think, at the current status. Being able to deal with Traitorous being is probably the biggest card we need to be aware of, and it can have fringe use against pilots, perilous positions, and different things like that that put us in some awkward spots. So definitely keep your upgrade hate handy.
And and I think currently I've got confiscate over fangs because of the point I made earlier, where like we'll have that one resource open most
Hmm.
turns because of the piloting discounting. So it doesn't feel like you're ever at a like resource disadvantage to just throw in the confiscate to take care of something else that they're doing, or for like in the case of cool, I've just unit into pilot and then they traitorous it, you can confiscate it and get it back on that turn and then swing it.
100%. Love it.
If Bosk gets up there though, if Bosk comes back in a huge way, Fang Fighters are back in my sideboard. That's just
100%. Yeah, that card's Bosk I think is definitely on the uptick, which is great. Um, so to run through more of our Sentinel options, Timely Reinforcements can be a great card against ramp. I think it's really, really great and does a lot of work, especially into like I've used it into Boss Green, I've used it into Piet, where they go big and you just play a bunch of units and they have to now deal with, 3 to 4 X-Wings hitting the ground or hitting the space arena. That just represents a lot of damage, allows you to punch through, can do some work. Cham Syndulla was also included in this, but I think with um, we have other ways to attack.
the DJ getting a kick to the butt.
Cham
Is that one?
feels less as good,
Cham's
less
cool.
necessary.
Yeah, Cham's cool, and like Han Green might take its place. Like the whole Han Green package might take its place and stuff, and it's like they're still ramping.
I
I think
still
Cham
just like
has.
K2 over Cham,
That's the
right?
thing. Yeah, exactly. Like K2 is just so much better right now. Until I see like a desperate need to be up in resources for
Hmm.
some reason.
If we
There's
need to be
nothing that's gonna
chamming,
exactly. There's just nothing that's gonna steal resources anymore. But yeah.
100%. Oh, sorry. So like this next section of these 3 cards are just kind of like fringe cards you could be playing between Dodonna, Gorilla Attack Pod being able to be a piloted thing, and also just coming into play ready most of the time can represent a lot of threat. But I think the Pod and Cassian serve a similar purpose, and I think Cassian over more turns represents more damage and is guaranteed to come into play ready, where Guerrilla Attack Pod might not. So if we're on,
Pod train.
yeah, and it's
Pod
it's
train was a wild week. If you were
it
there,
was.
show of hands in the chat.
Please let us
Pod
know.
week was a wild week.
We're now this is pod racing. It was a good time.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah.
Flipping Wedge onto pod was a drug for a minute there, but I'm glad
Oh my
we've all
god.
kicked it.
Yeah, for sure. Who doesn't want a grit unit that gets absolutely massive? Um, Yeah, so we have Rogue Squadron Skirmisher that can be a card we play against some control decks as a 4/6 and picking up pilots and or ships. I think it's a solid card to always have in mind as the meta keeps unfolding. Leia can be an extra, copy of Fleet Lieutenant and work with our pilots and or piloted ship units, and the Restore is very, very good. I keep doing that. The this package of Daring Raid, Red 5, the Y-Wings, and Shootdown, I think all kind of function in more in a Tarkin Town build, cards that you really want to be considering here. Um, and they just kind of work together. Shootdown, I would definitely like to have in the side of a Tarkin Town build because you might be able to shoot down a big ship and then Tarkin Town it, or find ways to set up to where Shootdown takes it down and puts 2 damage on their base. Things like that. And Daring Raid into Tarkin Town, very strong. That's 5 damage. Red 5, cleaning up more damaged units that you maybe have hit with your Y-Wings or stuff like that. They all function really well together. And Stay on Target being a uh, just like, yeah, we have heroic sacrifice and trench run at home is what Stay on Target feels like. And
Yeah,
they
it seemed really good at the start, and then it just kind of, yeah,
it not being a heroic card, I think, is what has also
yeah,
peeled us off of it, where you have these 2 other options that don't hurt your for cause numbers. And I think Stay on Target has potential, the draw card and the 2 damage, but again, it's linear and costs 2 and is not a heroic card. So yeah, on we go. So touch base on some of the matchups. Aggro, I think we are the faster deck if left unchecked. We might be the fastest deck in the game. We're winning on 4 resources pretty often. Um, or going or on the Wedge flip turn, we might even win before Wedge deploys with a strong Rebel Assault if left unchecked. That
If they
doesn't.
don't, if
Go
they
ahead.
don't interact at all, I win before wedge flips ever, every
Uh,
time.
it's amazing. It's really, really good. And now with the Battlefield Marine, and we can use Fleet Lieutenant to apply pressure both in ground and space, which I think is great. Wing Leader will help you lock down a lane to where they feel like they have to deploy and have to deploy their units into a different lane because you have such a big unit that just can keep pumping and take out everything they plan on playing, and if not, just outrace them is really good. Uh, and we've mentioned Rebel Assault a bunch here. We can regain the initiative. It's just incredibly strong. So this is where the aggro matchup, I think we're pretty good into aggro. We can get aggroed out by some tempo decks with bamboozles and waylays and stuff like that. But if you can cheat actions and slam a good chewy and different things like that, then you're in a great place. Because if they bamboozle, you're likely able to continue to play the chewy on the following turn. So the waylays, chewy locks it down. So chewy's great here. Wing leader's great here. Lots of great options. Now, tempo and mid range is where things start to get a little bit more interesting because I think this is where it becomes a lot more intricate as you play the deck as a pilot. If you take the aggro approach to a tempo mid range game, you're going to get blown out. Not every time. You might still win games, but the high likelihood of being blown out by a good tempo deck is higher. So you need to think about how to create awkward situations for your opponent. The ground pivots are great, putting into different places, holding, Rebel Assault, Heroic Sack, Trench Run, Metal Ceremony for a force throw, or just holding an event so you don't get Ahsoka. Things like that can be really good. Understand that they might bamboozle you, so you don't just overload a pilot into one ship. You can then maybe put a pilot on two different ships instead of loading them one into the Falcon, or two of them into the Falcon and being blown out that way. There's a lot of situations that you're going to find yourself in. And a big part of this is I love to guarantee my damage. If I think that I could pilot and get an attack off, that feels greedy. Like we have cards like For a Cause and Rebel Assault. Those will get us over the line. We don't need to um, push too far ahead and try and build the biggest ship ever. It's like you can build the ship after the fact, after you've guaranteed your 2 to 3 damage. Maybe it's more than that. So look for those moments to guarantee your damage. And as we hear, just let me math. All we're out here is just a bunch of homies trying to math. Um, and if you can put yourself in a situation where the cards you draw, like a Fleet Lieutenant, Trench Run, For Cause, Heroic Sack, and Cassian and or the Wedge flip, all of that counts to it. So when you're doing math in the games, just look for it. Look for ways to put yourself within 4 to 5 damage of killing your opponent. So 4 damage is always a for a cause. Fleet Lieutenant into a 3 attack unit is your 5 damage, and heroic sack can be 5, can be more. Trench run can be 7 to 10 damage. So you got to start looking for these. Cassian represents another 3 damage on that can come out of nowhere when timed right. So work your math here. That's why we guarantee our damage and we try and push through. So soft control has a similar concept here with the guaranteeing our damage. We're looking for that. With removal, this goes for both hard and soft control. Be aware of certain HP to attack numbers that their removal targets. So that's Fell the Dragon and Takedown being the main two to focus on, and Perilous Position in some ways. That maybe your Phoenix Squadron A-Wing is not very good into these blue decks because they can just have a free pop it. But if you're loading up a unit, but it doesn't climb past, and they're on 4 resources, but it's like if it becomes a 4/6, that's what we really want to be doing, and to avoid both takedown and fell the dragon, or it's just Chewbacca onto that ship, and we can do a lot of work there, which force them to have the traitorous, force them to have the no glory only results, force that, um, and that's why
Totally agree.
Chewbacca is so insane. Would you say?
That card complete this four glory no glory rather just went completely under my radar. I did not see that during preview season at all, and someone blew me out with it, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool.
Now I
Not
know.
completely infallible here. That
Yeah,
sucks.
for sure, for sure. Um, Overwhelming Barrage is a real card, and I think
Oh yeah.
command villainy decks are going to be on the rise. So big butts are really good. Hence, it's in a similar fashion to how we like to play against set jump to Lightspeed Boba Fett. Is the more units you have, the more unit or damage you can just soak onto units. It feels very similar here. Now with the 30 HP base, I have not noticed the need. I just throw it on the base because we're faster than Boba in most metrics, and so you can just put most of it onto the base. But having a big butt to make their overwhelming barrages not very good is something we want to do, and that includes Cassian on the ground. That includes Biggs on the ground. That includes Falcons. That includes a lot of cards here that set us up to be in a great spot to make the overwhelming barrage less good. Um, Vex, we'll get to the questions at the end. We're talking about in tempo. You got to keep the stuff. Did it again. Uh, Ground pivots are huge here. Being able to, if they try and lock down the space, it's really tough. And yeah, hard control. This is the same kind of concepts. I think that we can get under them pretty easily. For a cause is an insane card. Cassian's an insane card. One thing that I have noticed is don't give them a free kill heal with vigilance. So if your option is to play a Green Squadron A-Wing and they have 6 resources up, don't do it. Force them to use their resources because then you might be able to Green Squadron A-Wing pilot it and get it out of the range to being just killed by the vigilance. And I would much rather see mill or shield plus heal than kill because we can mitigate a lot of that damage by having a unit that survives that vigilance play. And I think that's probably one of the biggest comeback potential and comeback plays that these hard controls have is playing vigilance, whether that's for 4 or for 6. So keep that in mind and don't just walk your unit into it.
It, it can happen to you. I think I might be the only Sabine player on the planet that went to time versus a boss blue.
Wild.
Uh, it was not, dude. That guy. I don't get me started. He said I was slow playing. I'm like, okay, bud.
Okay,
Yeah, I
Mr. Bosloo. All right, on we go. So some play lines here I think are that we want to kind of recognize is to pilot or not to pilot. I think that that is the biggest misconception that we see here, and a lot of players just slam pilot, slam pilot, slam pilots. I'll be honest with you, Waffles. I think the art choices I had way too much fun picking out a lot of these. There's some throwbacks like Chef's Kiss. This is good.
yeah.
And as our boy
Favorite
Wedge,
credits on our card.
he's already on our way already on his way out. It's so good. But to pilot or not to pilot, we're definitely looking for situations where we're trying to guarantee our damage. So keeping initiative sometimes is much more important than piloting on turn one. You can always pilot on the second turn, going 3 cost in a 3 cost ship into free pilot. You can do it that following turn, and it might actually be more impactful on that Millennium Falcon that you're playing, or if you go wing leader into something, it can just make it really, really big. And doing things like that. There are times where, playing into Han, or if you're expecting a fireball, or which if they fireball you, that sucks, but let's just hope they have the initiative. But then if like you're expecting maybe a blue leader from your opponent, you might be like, I could get blown out by a blue leader here. Cool, I'm gonna pilot so that it takes that option off the table for them. And so those are the times where you really want to pilot. Don't just blindly pilot. As we mentioned before, you need to use Wedge's action 1 to 2 times a game to really get ahead. Um,
I'm
I
just used to
think
it, guys. It's okay.
we've all
I
done it.
pilot. all the time, like way more than I need to. A lot of the times, I'm pretty greedy, but sometimes I'm just not punished, and then I just keep doing it.
I
So
should have added a point here is force your opponents to have it. I think
yes,
if we play around everything that we think they might do, we're too cautious. We're an aggro deck. You
yeah,
can't be that cautious. Sometimes you gotta walk into a blowout because if you call their bluff accordingly, you win that game. And
I
it's
had to
just
step away for like a split second during the tempo. I mean, I was still listening on my headphones, but I
sure
had to
sure.
step away for the during the tempo mid range thing. That's basically where I would have said it, like
Yeah.
right around the just let me math. It's just it. You got to make them have it. If they don't have it, then okay, cool, you win.
Mhm.
Nine times, we and I've been saying this for the whole time we've been doing this. A lot of this deck is just, and a lot of aggro in SWU generally is just assume they don't and make them and be the one that they are reacting to
Mhm.
versus you having to be the one on reaction because
I love that.
you're almost always going to be able to like respond to whatever they're doing before they can. If they're constantly in a state of I have to get rid of their stuff, and we're always in a state of well I have more stuff to put out, you're still winning.
Absolutely. Another part we'll just touch on like some a play line that I like to try and set up is I want to force a Tarkin town, an early Tarkin town. I think we can win a lot of games where they turn one Tarkin town our first ship. If I think we win more games when Tarkin town is being used early. If they keep Tarkin town, that's when I start to feel bad. So if you can, play your A wing, play your Green Squadron A wing, and threaten it, or it's a battlefield marine, two probably units that they don't want to see stick around, that's your leverage for them to turn one Tarkin town you. And then that allows for your Falcons to stick. That allows for you to load into a wing leader, unit. That allows for you to do a lot more here to make things work. Some parts about that are um, play around Ahsoka, play around Force Throw because I think those are really, really impactful cards that can come out of those decks. And against CAD, like, man, if they're bazining you, you're still drawing a card. You're likely to draw another pilot or another ship that you can play and make use of. So do your best to force that early Tarkin town. Good pilots of those decks may not do it, but if you're able to respond with guaranteed damage, they're on a 25 HP base. We can close that type of damage really quick and force their plays to where they have to early claim and then we flood the board after that. So I think that's our best ways to play into both Cad Bane and to Quinlan right now.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet. Uh, One of our
All
most
right.
important plays is turn three. Turn three, we're on four resources, we're flipping wedge the next turn. These are the things you're looking for. Most often, I think priority is 2-2. Having a Chewbacca or Luke pilot into another 2 drop is fantastic because you're not only setting up a potential ship for Wedge to deploy into, you're also making a very strong ship from your first or from one of your first or second turn play. And the 2-2 option is really good, and sometimes you may have the Chewbacca on turn two, but it might be better to go like, all right, just put the Falcon on the field, and then I'll 2-2 the next turn and Chewbacca into the Falcon instead of going for the turn two Chewbacca. Look for these lines because I think 2-2 is one of the most strong things we can do. Now, if you don't have access to that, I really do like a 3-1 play where that mean that it's probably actually should be 1-3 because it's more like first action of your four resource turn, you go Rebel Assault, hit them for a
Yeah.
bunch of damage, and then play a 3-drop to follow up. It could be a 2-drop, but that's also fine. Um, Whatever that 3-drop ends up being. So I would call this 1-3 instead of 3-1, um, being one of your strongest avenues. And then worst case scenario, you're just going red leader into free pilots and using up all your resources. I think that's fine. It's still an efficient play. It's putting two bodies on the board, and you have an efficient red leader that can pump some damage. And something I'll talk about here in the five resources and beyond is you might feel obligated to resource a pilot, but if you have multiple space units and or like you want to go to a ground pivot and you already have that pilot in a ship, keep that card. It's not. It might not actually be that bad to keep that card and be like, okay, cool, attack with this one, and then repilot into the other one with the card from your hand. So now you have another buffed up unit, can guarantee some damage. And sometimes you're like, okay, cool, I guaranteed my damage with my bigs in an A wing, and then they play an interdictor. It's like, okay, cool. I'll play bigs on the ground from my hand as a 3/4, and now you've now who cares about the A wing? Like the A wing's lost. It's not getting through the interdictor. It's going to die to it whenever. But now you have a 3/4 on the ground that they now have to answer. So you can look for these options where you don't auto resource because it's already a pilot there. So I think that that is something that we should be looking for a little bit more.
Hmm.
And on 5 resources, you really don't ever go to 6 unless you're setting up one of these plays here. Double 3-drop,
Yeah.
Cassian or Chewbacca, and Rebel Assault, Heroic Sack, Trench Run. Those are like plus the 6. Go ahead.
I'd say six is where I stop pretty much every game.
Hmm.
Because I typically do go for a lot of the double threes as my six. Because by the time I get there, they've probably attempted to clear me out like 3 times at this
Hmm.
point, and there's sometimes that stuff gets through,
Hmm.
and so you have to, you know, re-up on your units there, and so double three is I'm going for that most of the time, so I'm almost always going to six and stopping.
Yeah. I think there are certain situations where, like, obviously, no, make this be a good a card gamer here. If you draw 2 cards and you're able to play both of those cards with 5 resources, don't resource one, right? Like that's like a pretty. I feel like that's a no-brainer, but I feel like I want to say it because I think that we sometimes will get in the habit in other decks where it's like see cards, resource one, see cards, resource one. This is a deck that once Wedge is deployed, we might be able to now gain a lot of card advantage. And it's very rarely would you go to like 7. Like I think the only times I've ever gone to 7 is like, ooh, that I'm on 6 resources. I drew a Cassian. Cool, put it in the resource row. But that's the
Yeah,
only reason we're ever really going that far because I don't think there's ever a point where we'd be playing that many units. I guess if you're like, I
it,
have
it
Chewbacca plus 2 drop, like,
yeah,
sure, but that's it feels very fringe.
it maps out almost perfectly that you're doing at least two things with six in that
Hmm.
deck, like all the way up the curve.
Pretty much.
Um,
Whether
it
that's
is great.
Chewbacca as a pilot with something else too. It's just so great.
Because we have so many three drops. That's
Hmm.
mainly my point of why I want to go double three. I always have a three drop in my hand. It feels like.
I love it. All right. So now we have some closing thoughts. And this is just my deck list. In the YouTube video that will go out, I will have the Tarkentown, Thermal Oscillator, the Dean's List, which are all linked as a pin in the KTOD Discord here. So if you go to the Wedge Aggression chat, you can see those pins. We have the Wedge pilot number sheet. It is updated. There's a list of cards in the second tab as well that I think you might want to get your hands on if you're trying to play Wedge and have all the options available to you. But yeah, so make sure you check that sheet. It'll help you understand numbers when we're talking about the soft control and hard control um, things to avoid when you're piloting and how to understand what your numbers would look like. Uh, so Wedge is an underrated and unreal leader. It definitely has a place in the meta. It takes a lot of time to understand how to pilot him, when to ground pivot, when not to ground pivot, when to go all in on a Falcon, when not to. I think those are stuff that you have to kind of play a little bit more. Um, be able to learn and adapt, and I think we have a lot of great options and builds. So when come into the chat, let us know you've been testing this version. We've seen a lot of people talking about timely intervention and Sabine's masterpiece, like Evil Grin just said, and going further of like, okay, we might go back to Tarkentown. Who knows? Like, we don't want to have tunnel vision on our builds. So definitely, please feel free to bring your thoughts there, and we'd love to hear you out. We're gonna, keep being a wonderful space to make Wedge understood. So if you're taking this to a future event and you have questions, please don't hesitate. We have a lot of great minds in there. Major Dean and my Commander Oakley here, we are going to do our best to keep piloting it. You got Evil Grin, Word of Bird, and countless others who are in that chat who I think would love to give a helping hand, and I think that that's why I've loved that chat so much is that it is Ferda, Ferda boys, Ferda team.
Yeah, I don't think there's really been other than like one incident, there's like never been a negative experience in our thread, I'd say.
Hmm.
It's really healthy. One of the healthier threads on the whole Discord at this point.
Let's keep doing
I'll
that.
stand on that. Yeah.
Ferda, Silky Mittens, Top Tittens, Ferda boys. Let's go. So, um, we're gonna open this up for just a little question and answer. So if you guys have questions, go feel free to type them in the chat, and we can rip through them if you have any like specific things. But if not, we're good, and I might go to streaming here in a little bit. I might stream for like an hour or so, but I'll probably create a new rendezvous point for that. But
Did I play you the other day, Rose, or is that someone else?
Cabo has a sick
Probably
rose blue list, by the way.
that was you
Or
then.
rose yellow, rose Nebat Village. Sorry,
Yeah, that was you. I'm not really on Petronaki often. I'll be honest with y'all. Most of my testing is done in paper
love it.
with my like local team that I trust their judgment. Generally speaking, he's a insane double yellow Han pilot that if you've been in the Sabine chat in the past couple seasons, you're hearing me usually bitch about. But yeah, pardon.
Dude, cunning on fours sucks.
It's down with that color, dude. I
Yeah,
just man, come on.
dude, it's crazy the sheer amount of stuff that cunning has access to. So it's pretty nuts. And we have cards that can interact with it in some ways, as far as being able to play, Cassian from the row, Chewbacca onto a ship so it doesn't get bounced. But the exhaust effects are real. But as I've said, into double cunning decks for, since they really became prominent, you can beat one cunning. It's really hard to beat two. If they go cunning and then they flip Han and then do another cunning, it's really tough. So just
I mean,
take those
that's the
beats.
skill ceiling,
Yeah,
skill floor rather.
yeah. If they have it, they have it. That's
You
why
can
we
draw
force
it.
them to
Yeah.
have it. Yep. And we still are pushing damage in a lot of ways through rebel assaults and other things. I think, um, you can force awkward play patterns with stuff like Metal Ceremony and Wing Leader, where they want to advance their board, but you go, it's like, cool, I'll make a big unit, and they're like, I guess I have to waylay, and then you can then follow up on the future turns with creating even bigger unit or putting more units onto the board and making their play lines awkward, which I think is great.
Mm-hmm. Tandem assault. Off of the deck. I think it just hasn't been on our radar because it wasn't heroic. I
Mhm.
know there's a couple of people that were using it on Sabine before the Django ban or situation,
Mhm.
but it's possible, I guess. At this point, I we're just really prioritizing keeping our for a cause a guaranteed four hit.
Yeah.
I think
I think it's more
more times
important.
than none.
And it's it feels too like I kind of like Rebel Assault being a guaranteed +1 pump. I've pumped one unit for one a few times. Like you just kind of have to, right? And Tandem Assault having this kind of restriction of being able, like having, like you attack with the space unit and then give a ground unit +2. Am I reading that card correctly?
I think that's the one they're meaning, right?
Yeah, and it's like I feel like it lines up just a little bit if you do,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So I think I like Rebel Assault more because it is less conditional, and I do think it's like, oh cool, it'd be essentially copy 4 and 5 of Rebel Assault, but I think we could play the colorless, the aspectless attack with 2 units cards as well, which I do
I
like.
think another big thing though is like it's hard enough already to get one rebel assault off if they know what you're going for. Like
Hmm.
if the person you're fighting has played this game long enough, they see red, white, green, and they just know to not let us have more than 2 units at any given time.
It's a lot of
So
damage we
like,
can present.
well, yeah, and I feel like most games I'm holding on to rebel assaults for like the entire game just to get it off once, and
Hmm.
that one time I get it off is like that's game.
Hmm.
So they're doing the right thing, but at the same time, I don't want more cards that could potentially be dead draws in that regard.
Hmm.
Rebel Assault being the best one, so duh, we run three. But like, it's harder to justify running more than one of those effects when it's really hard to just stick two units at the same time, especially against a tempo mid range strategy that knows exactly what we want to do.
Yeah.
Hell, at
And
this point, I think the only non-heroic I was just looking, the only non-heroic card in my entire deck is Confiscate. It's in the sideboard.
mine's Fang Fighters. Yeah,
There it is.
it's there, and then it's enough. Like we're pretty guaranteed on the 3 to 4. Like it's if at worst is probably 3. Like if you get super blown out where there are 2 confiscates or in the same spot in your deck, I'm sorry, but
There was a there was a nice chart that someone was posting in the Sabine thread that was like, if you could have up to like 8 non-heroic units and still guarantee at least hitting for three,
mhm,
or like
mhm.
80% or something like that, some crazy percentage. And someone with a
So
better memory will know. But
we're trying to math.
next question.
It's a good one. So Marauder costs 5 though. Hmm. It's not a bad idea. I just don't think we make use of like the other aspects of something like Marauder, and we have Blue Leader to do some ambushing. Um, I think I would probably be higher on playing like, yeah, it might be like on Timely Intervention before I'd be on Marauder.
There's a lot of you're gonna see this when you come to the thread, but we're kind of allergic to non-rebel units.
That too.
Uh, it's yeah, Achu exactly. So it's it's one of those things where like we have so much rebel synergy at this point that it's baked in very steeply. I It's going to be really hard to get us onto something that doesn't have rebel on it as a trait. That being said, I'm not going to say that it couldn't happen at some point.
Hmm.
It happened to Sabine. They thought they were going to be rebel only forever, and then Record and Poe
Well,
came out.
were presented to absurdly good units, like
True,
two of the best units ever
exactly.
with ECL. So, if we get presented with something like that, I'm all for it. Like if we get a great 4 cost ambushing ship that does amazing things and it's some fringe trait, like let's send it. Valiant Assault Ship was something I was considering as a Saboteur unit. I think that that's a very good card. We were considering um, even the senatorial corvettes as well, but it's like it's just like I think the rebel tag is far too important, and it needs to be something like disabling Fang Fighter as a like does a pretty important thing, like getting rid of a
For me,
traitorous.
for me, it has to be Poe record levels of broken to consider it.
Hmm.
Like I'm at that point.
I don't. I can't argue. Can't argue that.
Yeah.
The rebel synergy is too strong here. So fantastic. Well, I'm sure there might be some more. Go ahead, Dean.
Furrex, I guess. Furrex, is he still here? Oh
I
no,
think he
they're
he,
dropping out.
he
Okay,
pieced. We doubled back to Quinn, I think, for him, so
that's
it was
true.
great.
Oh yeah. If I don't play the deck, I'm the only one asking questions.
Yeah, I love it because we covered everything, and we got some gamers in here. And we have some good Ferda Squadron members just who are in there in the chat, which I think is awesome. And I appreciate you coming, Cabo. I mean, it's a similar concept of what I was gonna allude to earlier, and it goes as a great point is play other decks, see how decks function. I think that helps you become a better wedge pilot as well. You can understand, what cards you're likely to see and how they might interact with your opponent. So you can understand that it's like, all right, my opponent who plays Kira is likely to see these cards and they might resource this way because they might think I'm going to be going into space a bunch and then I can ground pivot and do this. Like you you can use that knowledge and go and look at a bunch of the other deck threads. Like this Discord is phenomenal for that. You can find a lot of great information, and yeah, I
Nobody's
think
keeping secrets here.
yeah, let's share it. Beatle's done. We're no more secrets. We're done with that
No
stuff.
more. Woo.
That
That's
was
yep.
amazing. I thought the network did an amazing job with that, but and I was so fun to follow along. But the keeping of deck lists was like, come on, guys, just like let's like play the game. But hey, they wanted to get that dub, so I respect
Hey,
it.
KTOD won. It don't matter.
Yeah, it
It
does.
didn't
Let's
matter in
go.
the end.
Yeah.
The sharing, the sharing team.
Too good. Well, this is going to be on YouTube, so if you are listening to this on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, put some questions down below. And thank you everybody for tuning in. May the force be with you all. Ferda. Ferda leader,
Later.
out. Cheers, everybody.